Honestly, back then I felt like the luckiest guy alive. Never in a million years did I think I'd end up with someone like Kenzie. She's gorgeous, full of life, the kind of woman who turns heads when she walks into a room, and me. I've always been the average guy, nothing that would normally stand out. If life were a movie, I'd be the quiet supporting character in the background, not the one who gets the girl. But somehow, Kenzie chose me. And now, here she was, proving just how much she cared by planning something I never expected. A birthday surprise that would shake me in ways I couldn't have imagined. That weekend started with a shock. I thought we were just going to dinner, like we usually did for special occasions. But when Kenzie pulled up to pick me up after work, her car was packed. There were bags, coolers, pillows, and in the back seat sat my best friend and his wife, grinning like they were in on some big secret. Before I could even ask what was going on, Kenzie leaned over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Don't worry about a thing. Just come with me. I've got it all figured out." My brain was spinning. I had no idea what she meant until the pieces started coming together. Kenzie had rented a huge house on the lake, my favorite place in the world, and invited all of our closest friends for a full weekend celebration. The drive out there was surreal. The road wound through thick green trees, sunlight flashing through the branches as the car curved around bends. My chest felt tight with anticipation. I've never been the guy who expected grand gestures, but knowing someone put this much effort into MIT was overwhelming. A part of me couldn't help but think, do I really deserve this? Do I really deserve her? When we finally pulled up, the house looked like something out of a dream. A big, modern cabin with wide decks and tall windows sat right on the water's edge, glowing under strands of golden lights. You could see the reflection shimmering across the lake. And inside everyone was already there. Friends I hadn't seen in months, Kenzie's sister and her husband. Couples we knew, all waiting, all cheering when I walked in. They shouted, "Happy birthday," and shoved a beer into my hand. I felt like I'd stepped into someone else's life. I wasn't the guy who usually got the spotlight. But that night I was. We ate, we drank, we laughed. Music spilled from the speakers. People danced in the kitchen. Someone even made a toast to me. I remember sitting there, just watching the scene unfold, thinking, this is it. This is the happiest I've ever been. And through it all, my eyes kept finding Kenzie. She was glowing, moving around the room, making sure everyone had a drink, laughing so hard her eyes crinkled at the corners. I thought to myself, how did I get so lucky? How did she ever choose me? The next morning, sunlight poured into the house, and I woke to the sound of voices and splashing outside. Everyone was down by the dock, jumping into the cool lake water, already laughing like kids at summer camp. I threw on a pair of shorts, grabbed a drink, and joined them. The water was icy, refreshing, a shock that woke me up instantly. We played games, raced across the dock, tossed a football in the shallow end. I floated on my back, staring up at the sky, thinking that I didn't want this moment to end. Kenzie, of course, was the life of the party. She splashed me, taunted me in a water fight, then collapsed onto a towel with her hair dripping wet and her cheeks flushed pink from the sun. I remember looking at her then, with the lake glittering behind her, and promising myself, I'm never letting this girl go by the evening. After hours of swimming, grilling, and day drinking, the mood shifted from wild to cozy. Someone suggested games. At first, it was harmless, fun, silly drinking games, guessing games, stuff that made everyone laugh. The living room was loud with cheers and groans, music still playing low in the background. I'd had a few beers, enough to feel buzzed but still steady. Kenzie, though, was way further along. She's always been a lightweight, and after several hours of cocktails and shots, she was flushed, giggly, and slurring just a little. That's when her sister brought out this couple's card game. Each card had a question or challenge meant to spark conversation between partners. Most of them were fun. Who snores louder? Who takes longer to get ready? The room roared with laughter at every answer. Couples teased each other. People shouted jokes across the room. It was all fun and gamesend till it WASN single quotes. Then came the card that changed everything. The question was, what first attracted you to your partner? The whole room quieted down just a little, everyone curious, leaning in, waiting for sweet or funny answers. I turned to Kenzie, already smiling, ready to hear what she'd say. Maybe she'd mention my sense of humor, or the way we met through grace, or maybe something about my smile. But Kenzie, cheeks red and eyes glassy from the alcohol, blurted it out before thinking. He was safe. The words hit like a gut punch. My smile froze. Safe. I echoed. Yeah, she went on, laughing awkwardly, like, after my abusive ex, I just needed someone I knew wouldn't cheat or leave me. He seemed nice enough, and I figured he was the safe option. Silence. Dead silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. Everyone looked around, some of them shifting uncomfortably, others trying to force a laugh to break the tension. But for me, the world had already tilted sideways. My chest felt hollow. I wasn't her first choice. I wasn't even her choice because she fell in love with me. I was her safety net, her rebound from chaos, the guy who was nice enough, who wouldn't hurt her. My whole identity in our relationship collapsed into that one phrase, safe option, her sister. Clearly panicked, quickly grabbed another card and read it out loud to redirect the game. A few people chuckled, trying to pretend the moment hadn't just happened. But I couldn't unhear it. I couldn't shake the way she said it, like it was obvious, like it wasn't meant to cut me open, but still did. I excused myself, mumbling something about needing the bathroom, and slipped outside. The night air was cool, the lake shimmering quietly under the moon. I leaned against the railing, trying to breathe, trying to get rid of the tightness in my chest. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and called Grace, my childhood best friend, the one who had introduced me to Kenzie in the first place. She couldn't make the trip because of work, but when she answered and heard my voice, she knew something was wrong. I told her what had happened, every word of it. Grace went silent for a moment. Then she said, "That's not okay. You don't deserve to be someone's backup plan. If she really sees you as just the safe choice, then maybe you need to think about what this relationship really is." Her words hurt, but they rang true. I didn't want to believe them. I didn't want to think that everything Kenzie and I had built over 2 years could boil down to her just wanting someone predictable. Still, the seed was planted. When I walked back inside, the mood had shifted. Everyone was still chatting, but quieter, like they could feel the storm brewing under the surface. Kenzie stumbled toward me, wanting to talk, wanting to explain right then and there in front of everyone. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand there and hash it out in front of a room full of friends. So I told her, no, we'd talk later. Instead, I grabbed my bag, dragged it into the living room, and laid down on the couch, staring at the ceiling, while muffled laughter carried on upstairs. I didn't sleep much that night, and before the sun came up, before anyone else was awake, I quietly packed the rest of my stuff and walked out the door. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't sit there smiling, blowing out candles, going boating, acting like I was okay. Not after what she said. Not after the truth slipped out. And that's how that weekend that started as the best birthday of my life turned into the one I'll never forget for an entirely different reason. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the thin curtains of the lake house, soft and golden. I woke up to the sound of laughter drifting from the living room and the faint clatter of pans coming from the kitchen. Still half asleep, I pulled on a hoodie and made my way downstairs. What I saw instantly warmed me. Kenzie, hair tied up in a messy bun, no makeup, flipping pancakes while my friends hovered around the counter helping out, cracking jokes, setting plates. It felt like a scene out of a movie. I'd always imagined moments like this only happened on screen friends gathered together, carefree, laughing without a worry in the world. But there it was, real and alive, right in front of me. As soon as I stepped down, Kenzie looked up and grinned. Happy birthday again, sleepyhead. Her voice had that playful, teasing sweetness that never failed to get me. I laughed, replying, "This might just be the best birthday breakfast ever." Everyone cheered. Glasses clinking, and the table filled with golden pancakes drizzled in syrup, fresh strawberries piled on top. I sat down, surrounded by my closest people, and for a moment all I could feel was gratitude. Gratitude that Kenzie had planned all this, every last detail, just for me. After breakfast, we headed down to the dock. The lake shimmered under the late morning sun, the water glittering like silver. A couple of my friends didn't even hesitate. They jumped right in, splashing and screaming like kids. I followed, ripping off my t-shirt and diving into the water. It was cool and refreshing, wrapping around me like a rush of freedom. When I surfaced, the air rang with laughter. Kenzie sat at the edge of the dock, her legs swinging over the water, eyes locked on me. For a split second, I thought, this is it. I'm the luckiest guy alive. The way she looked at me, bright, soft, almost glowing, it was like standing in the sun. I swam closer, grabbed her hand, and pulled her in. Her scream rang out as she fell, and when she hit the water, everyone on the dock erupted in cheers. We splashed, laughed, clung to each other in the lake as if nothing else mattered. By the afternoon, we were drained. People sprawled on couches in the living room, some dozing off, others half watching a movie. I lay on the sofa with Kenzie curled up on my chest. She whispered, just for me, "You know, I've been so nervous this whole week. Worried you'd figure out the surprise and it would all fall apart." I stroked her hair, whispering back, "Kenzie, you blew me away. I can't believe how lucky I am." She looked up, eyes sparkling, and kissed me gently on the cheek. Later that evening, we fired up the grill. The smell of burgers, corn on the cob, and smoky barbecue drifted across the yard. The sky turned orange and pink as the sun dipped behind the trees. We sat around a fire pit with music playing from a portable speaker, one of my buddies strumming a guitar while the rest of us sang and laughed. It was everything I could have asked for. And then the night took a turn. The drinks kept flowing, more than usual. At first it was just fun laughs, stupid dares, inside jokes. But Kenzie is a lightweight, and I watched her toss back drink after drink. I hesitated, thought about telling her to slow down, but stopped myself. It's our weekend, I told myself. Let her have fun. That's when it happened. Someone pulled out this couple's card game. Silly prompts, questions meant to make couples argue or laugh. Nothing serious until one card asked, "What was the first thing that attracted you to your partner?" I smiled, expecting something sweet or even a little embarrassing. But instead, Kenzie laughed and blurted out, honestly, he was safe. I knew he wouldn't cheat or leave me. The room went dead silent. I froze, staring at her, trying to process. And before I could even react, she added, "Yeah, after my abusive ex, I just wanted a safer option." He seemed nice enough. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. A safer option. Seemed nice enough. My stomach twisted. I looked around. Everyone was avoiding eye contact. Her sister fumbling to read the next card to cover the awkwardness. I forced a weak smile, excused myself, and stepped outside. The night air was cool, but it couldn't calm the storm inside me. My chest felt tight. My birthday weekend, this beautiful trip she'd planned. And all I could hear were those words. I pulled out my phone and called Grace. My childhood best friend, the one person who always got me. When I told her what Kenzie had said, Grace was quiet at first, then her voice shook. "You don't deserve that. You shouldn't have to sit there and swallow it. If it were me, I'd leave too." Her words echoed in my head as I stood on that porch, staring out at the dark water when I went back inside. Kenzie tried to talk to me right there, in front of everyone, still slurring a little from the alcohol. I shook my head, said we'd talk later. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to fight in front of everyone. So instead, I packed my bag, dragged it to the couch, and lay there wide awake while the noise of laughter and music carried on in the background. And before the sun came up, I was gone. I left quietly, not saying a word, driving back to the city while everyone else was still asleep. The lake faded in my rearview mirror, but those words, safe, a safer option. Nice enough stayed, lodged in my chest like a splinter I couldn't pull out. The drive back to the city was quiet, almost haunting. The highway stretched on endlessly, streetlights smearing across my windshield like blurry streaks of yellow. I didn't play any music, didn't even bother turning on the radio. Just the steady hum of the engine filling the silence while my thoughts spun in circles. By the time I pulled into my apartment, it was barely 6 in the morning. The city was still half asleep, the streets damp with early mist. I dropped my bag by the door and collapsed onto my bed, but sleep wouldn't come. All I could hear were those 3 words echoing over and over. A safe option. Like a broken record, I couldn't switch off. I thought about the last 2 years. The nights we cooked dinner together in my tiny kitchen. The weekend getaways. The nights curled up watching movies, even the little fights that ended with laughter. All those memories suddenly felt tainted. If, from the very beginning, she saw me as nothing more than safe, had she ever truly loved me? Or had I just been the consolation prize after she'd been shattered by someone else? My phone buzzed non-stop. Kenzie's name lit up the screen again and again, followed by texts from our friends at the lake. Everyone wanted to know where I was, why I'd left, what was going on. I ignored them all. I didn't want to explain, not yet. Not while my chest still felt like it was caving in. I flipped my phone over and let it vibrate against the table until it finally went still. By noon, I shut it off completely. I grabbed my clubs and went golfing, my usual escape when life got messy. The crack of the driver hitting the ball, Watching it soar across the green gave me a brief release. But even standing there on that wide open course, my mind wouldn't leave the night behind. I kept seeing her face, flushed from drinking, laughing as she said those words, cutting me open without even realizing it. That night, I sat alone in my dark apartment. No lights, just the faint glow from the city bleeding through the window. Grace's words echoed in my head. You don't deserve that. You don't have to put up with it. She was right. She always had been. But I couldn't quiet the part of me still clinging to Kenzie. I loved her. God, I still loved her. But love didn't stop the knot in my chest. Didn't erase the sting of being reduced to nothing more than safe. By Sunday afternoon, I heard her keys in the lock. My chest tightened. The door flew open, and there she was, face flushed, eyes blazing with anger and exhaustion. You really left like that? She snapped, storming in. Do you have any idea what you did? You ruined everything. The whole trip. Everyone was miserable because you weren't there. I sat on the couch, calmer than I thought I'd be after 2 days of silence. I'd had time to cool down, to replay it all 1,000 times. But hearing her words still hit like a slap. I didn't want to turn it into a fight in front of everyone, I said evenly. I left to keep it from blowing up. Kenzie dropped her bag to the floor, tears brimming, but her voice sharp as glass. Do you understand how humiliated I felt? I planned everything for you. I rented the house, booked the boat, thought of every little detail, and you just walked out. You left me there to look like the asshole while everyone whispered about us. For a moment, guilt pricked at me. I knew she had worked hard. I knew she wanted to make me happy. But the hurt inside me was still raw. Do you even remember what you said? I asked quietly. She froze. Her brows furrowed as she tried to recall, then exhaled. I remember bits and pieces. I know I said something stupid. I was drunk. You know how I get. I didn't mean it. I looked straight at her, my voice low. You called me a safe option. You said you picked me because I wouldn't leave or cheat. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To not be loved for who I am, but just because I'm less risky than the guy before me. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she shook her head. No, that's not what I meant. What I meant was after everything with my ex, I needed someone I could trust. And you are that person. I love you. I swear to you, I love you. I just didn't say it right. I was stupid. I'm sorry. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But her slurred voice from that night, the casual way she said it, the hollowness of those words, it was still there, lodged in me like a thorn. The room went quiet. Just her sobs breaking the silence, my own heart beat loud in my ears. I knew this moment could define everything, whether we survived this or collapsed for good. And the truth terrified me, because even if I chose to forgive her, could I ever unhear those words? Could I ever look at her the same way again without wondering if I was just the safe bet? That night, we didn't find an answer. She cried herself out, and I sat there staring through the window at the city lights, wondering if love was enough. Because sometimes the doubt left behind hurts more than outright betrayal. That night, after Kenzie finally cried herself to sleep, I sat alone on the couch, staring out the window. The city outside was buzzing cars, faint music, people laughing in the distance, but inside our apartment, it felt dead quiet. The only sound was the steady tick of the clock on the wall, each second pressing heavier on me. I realized I was standing at a crossroads. One road was forgiveness, choosing to believe her, brushing off her words as drunken nonsense, trying to bury the sting. The other road was letting go, accepting that what slipped out of her mouth revealed something deeper, something real. But what scared me most was that I wasn't ready to choose either way. The next morning, we sat at the kitchen table, breakfast untouched. The silence was suffocating. Kenzie kept stirring her coffee, never lifting it to her lips, while I sat there, exhausted from a sleepless night. Finally, I broke the silence. "You say you love me," I said quietly, "but do you love me? Or do you just love the fact that I'm safe? That I won't leave you like he did?" She looked up, her eyes swollen and red. "You're doing this again, doubting me. You know I say stupid stuff when I'm drunk. Do you really believe I haven't loved you these past 2 years? Do you think I'd stay, go through everything we've been through, if it wasn't real?" I couldn't answer, because she wasn't wrong. But the truth is, her words had carved something open inside me. Being seen as a safe option wasn't the same as being loved for who I am. I dragged myself to work that day, but I couldn't focus on a damn thing. My co-workers chatted, laughed, asked about my weekend. I just gave a half smile and turned back to the window, watching traffic crawl by. Grace's voice kept replaying in my head. "You don't deserve that." It was like her words had stuck, gnawing at me that night. When I got home, Kenzie had set the table with candles and flowers. She'd cooked dinner, her way of showing she was sorry. She sat across from me, eyes wide and pleading. "Can you give me another chance?" She whispered, "I'll prove to you that I love you. I can't lose you over one stupid, drunken comment." And I believed her. Or at least I wanted to. I could see the regret in her eyes, the fear in her voice. But something inside me stayed restless. Forgiveness was one thing, trust was another. And trust, once cracked, doesn't just snap back together. Over the next few weeks, Kenzie tried harder than ever. She texted me during the day, planned little dates, even surprised me at work with lunch. And part of me felt touched by that effort. But another part kept wondering, was this love or was it guilt? Was she fighting for me or for her own conscience? One night, Grace reached out with a simple message. "Are you okay?" I hesitated. Since the lake house, I hadn't talked much with her. I didn't want her concern to sway me, didn't want to lean too hard on someone outside the relationship. But my fingers typed before my brain could stop them. Not really. We talked for a bit. And then she said the thing I'd been avoiding. You can't live in a relationship built on doubt. If it's real love, it should bring you peace, not constant second-guessing. It cut deep because it was true. Kenzie and I had fallen into a cycle, her proving, me doubting. Both of us exhausted. The breaking point came at a friend's birthday party. Everyone was drinking, laughing, catching up. Kenzie clung to me the entire night, like she was terrified I'd slip away if she let go. At one point, she wrapped her arm tight around mine and introduced me loudly to a group of her friends. "This is my boyfriend, the best guy, the one who'll never let me down." It sounded sweet, but to me it landed like a punch. Never let me down. It was the same undertone as that night at the lake safe, reliable, risk-free. Not passion, not desire, not the kind of love I wanted to believe we had when we got home. I stood on the balcony with a cigarette I hadn't touched in years. Kenzie came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and whispered, "Please, don't leave me." Her voice shook. I closed my eyes, smoke burning my lungs. I didn't answer, because deep down, I was starting to wonder if maybe it wasn't about me leaving her, but about whether there was still anything left for me to hold on to. After that night, when Kenzie held me tight on the balcony and whispered, "Please don't leave me," something inside me snapped. Or maybe it didn't snap. Maybe it just shifted. I stood there, letting the smoke rise into the dark sky, and for the first time, I realized I was no longer the same man I'd been when we first fell in love. The days that followed blurred together. I woke up, went to work, smiled at co-workers, came home, and sat across from Kenzie at the dinner table. On the surface, everything looked normal. Meals cooked, kisses goodnight, those little "I love you" are sprinkled throughout the evening. But deep down, it all felt like a performance. Like I was playing the role of boyfriend in a script I didn't believe in anymore. One evening, over dinner, Kenzie reached for my hand. Her voice was soft, but her eyes shone with determination. "I've been thinking," she said, "maybe it's time we take the next step. Move into a bigger place, or maybe start talking about marriage." The word hit me like a brick. Marriage, future, a bigger life together. I should have felt joy, maybe even relief, but instead my chest tightened. "I'm not ready," I admitted. "I just need more time." Her smile faltered. She let go of my hand slowly, trying to act like it didn't sting. But I saw it in her eyes, the disappointment, the hurt. That night, lying awake in bed, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself the question I'd been running from. Do I still love Kenzie? Or am I clinging to the memory of what we used to be? I remembered the beginning, the way she laughed under streetlights, how nervous I was the first time I held her hand. Back then, her smile had been enough to light me up inside, but now, those memories felt bittersweet, almost painful, because the spark I once felt seemed to be fading into ashdot, and that's when Grace slipped back into the picture. Late one night, a message lit up my phone. "You awake?" I stared at it for a while before answering. Yeah, we started talking again. I told her about the awkward dinners, the hugs that no longer felt warm, the heaviness of pretending everything was fine. Grace didn't judge, didn't push, she just listened. And then she sent one line that hit me harder than anything Kenzie had ever said. "Sometimes love doesn't end because someone messed up. Sometimes it ends because one person no longer feels truly chosen." I read that sentence over and over again, and damn, it cut deep. Because that's exactly what I'd been feeling. I wasn't sure Kenzie loved me anymore, not the way I wanted to be loved. It felt like she loved the safety, the stability, the fact that I wasn't like her ex. But was that enough for me? The next day, after work, instead of going home, I drove aimlessly around the city. Stoplights, headlights, neon signs, they all blurred together until I found myself at a small bar. I ordered a beer and sat alone, staring into the foam, wondering if the men sitting near me were also hiding from their own stories. When I finally went home, Kenzie was asleep. I stood in the doorway, watching her breathing, her face peaceful, and in that moment, I felt a pang of something I still cared for her. I still wanted her to be okay. But the love I once felt, the kind that made me chase her without question, had changed. A few nights later, at a group dinner with friends, the inevitable question came up. "So," one of them teased, "when's the wedding? You two have been together long enough, right?" The table erupted in laughter, all eyes turning to us. Kenzie smiled proudly and said, "I'm ready whenever he is." He's the one man I know will never break my heart. Everyone laughed, clapped me on the back, but her words hit me like a weight on my chest. There it was, again the same undertone as at the lake house. Not passion, not fire, not love me for who I am, just safe, dependable, risk-free. That night, I made up an excuse about a headache and slept on the couch. Lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, I knew the truth. We were drifting apart, and fast. A week later, I finally asked Kenzie to sit down in the living room. My hands were clammy, my heart pounding. She looked at me with worried eyes. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," I said quietly. "I love you. I really do. But I don't want to just be your safe choice. I don't want to be the guy you're with because I won't hurt you. I want to be loved for me for who I am. And I don't know if that's what this is anymore." Kenzie broke down, tears streaming down her face. She threw her arms around me, sobbing. "Don't say that. I love you. I love you so much. Please don't let one stupid thing I said ruin us." Her pain was real, and seeing it broke me too. But in that moment, I also knew something else. Sometimes love isn't about who hurts, it's about who feels truly seen. And I wasn't sure we were ever going to see each other clearly again. The thought scared me, but it was becoming impossible to ignore. Maybe the kindest thing we could do for each other was to finally let go. The days after that conversation felt heavier than I could have imagined. Our apartment was the same walls, same furniture, same routines, but the air between us had changed. It was thicker, harder to breathe. Kenzie and I still ate dinner together, still shared a bed, but there was this invisible wall, like we were living side by side instead of together. I started staying out later after work. There was always an excuse. Late meetings, traffic, drinks with a buddy. But deep down, I knew what I was really doing. I was avoiding her. Avoiding the questions in her eyes. Avoiding the talk we both knew was coming. The one neither of us had the courage to start. One Friday night, instead of driving home, I pulled into a little bar on the edge of town. It wasn't crowded. Just dim lights, worn wooden tables, and a jazz band playing soft in the corner. I ordered a whiskey and sat alone in the back. I pulled out my phone. Grace had texted me earlier. "You doing okay?" The message was still unanswered. My finger hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to unload everything. I'm exhausted. I feel lost. I don't know if I love her the same way anymore. But instead, I typed something short. "I'm fine, thanks." A minute later, Grace replied, "Are you really fine? I'll listen if you need it." I downed the whiskey in one swallow. The burn in my throat didn't match the cold in my chest. I typed back, "Maybe I'm not myself anymore. Or maybe this love has changed." It took her a while. But when my phone lit up again, her words cut straight through me. Love doesn't always end because of betrayal or mistakes. Sometimes it just fades, and we have to be brave enough to admit it. I set my phone down and stared at the empty glass. She was right. I wasn't brave. I'd been too afraid to hurt Kenzie, too afraid to face the truth that the love I once thought would last forever was slowly slipping away. That night, I got home late. Kenzie was already asleep. I stood in the doorway, watching her curled up under the blanket. A wave of guilt washed over me. Was I already betraying her, even if I hadn't left yet? Wasn't letting my heart wander just as bad? The next morning, I got up early, Kenzie was still sleeping. I took my coffee out onto the balcony and sat there, staring at nothing. The sun rose, birds chirped, but none of it touched me. The same thought kept circling in my head. If I stay, we'll only keep hurting each other more. Later that weekend, Kenzie surprised me. She suggested a day trip. "We need a change of scenery," she said, forcing a smile. I didn't have the heart to refuse, so we drove out to a quiet lake. She spread out a blanket, unpacked a picnic basket she'd prepared. She was still trying, still giving her all. And watching her, it broke me a little inside. As we ate, she suddenly reached across the blanket and grabbed my hand. Her voice trembled. "Do you still love me?" Such a simple question, but it landed like a knife to the chest. I froze, staring into her eyes. There was fear in them, pure fear. Like if I gave the wrong answer, her whole world would collapse. I didn't answer right away. I squeezed her hand, hoping that gesture would be enough, hoping I could dodge the truth. But she didn't let me. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "I can feel you drifting away. You don't look at me the way you used to. If something's changed, please, just tell me." I stayed silent. I knew I could lie, say the words she wanted to hear. "Of course I love you." I knew it would calm her, at least for now. But silence has a language of its own. And mine told her everything. Kenzie broke down crying, turning away, her shoulders shaking. I pulled her into my arms, but the embrace felt hollow. My hug no longer gave her the safety it once did. We packed up and drove home in silence. The road stretched endlessly, the only sound the hum of the engine and the pounding of my own heart. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that this was the beginning of the end. That night, she locked herself in the bedroom. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, hearing Grace's words echo in my head. Sometimes love doesn't die because of betrayal. There just isn't love anymore. And for the first time, I admitted to myself I couldn't keep pretending. After that picnic by the lake, I knew things would never go back to the way they were. The apartment was the same old couch, same little dining table with 2 chairs, the same messy bookshelf Kenzie always nagged me about. But the air inside felt heavy, like it was covered in fog. Everything we did together felt forced. We still talked, but only about surface-level things. "Did you eat yet? Do you need me to stop by the store? What time's your meeting tomorrow?" The words passed between us, but the warmth was gone. The eagerness to share, to laugh, to connect, it just wasn't there anymore. At night, lying side by side, the physical distance was only inches. But the emotional distance stretched farther than I could reach. One evening, I was scrolling on my phone from the couch when Kenzie walked out of the bedroom. She sat across from me, her eyes tired but determined. "We can't keep living like this," she said slowly. "I need to know where this is going." My chest tightened. I gripped my phone, searching for words that wouldn't wound her, but nothing came. "What does your silence mean?" She pushed, her voice already breaking. I inhaled deeply. I don't know how to say it. I don't want to hurt you." Her tears fell before she could stop them. "But your silence hurts more. Do you know what it feels like to wake up next to someone and feel like they're a stranger? I can't keep pretending." Her words hit like a slap. I swallowed hard. For so long I'd been running from this moment, but now it was here, and there was no escape. "I'm not sure I feel the same as I used to," I admitted, my voice hoarse. I still care about you, but I don't know if I can call it love anymore." Kenzie stared at me, stunned, tears streaking down her face. I knew, but I still hoped I was wrong. The room fell into silence. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the pounding of my own heart. Neither of us spoke again that night. I didn't sleep. I lay with my back turned to her, eyes wide open in the dark, and in the quiet Grace's voice crept into my mind, her texts, her empathy, her way of seeing through me. I hated myself for it, but I knew I was leaning on her for comfort, and that guilt made the weight on my chest even heavier. The next morning, I walked out of the bedroom to find Kenzie sitting at the dining table. She hadn't slept much either. A cup of coffee sat in front of her, stone cold. "I think we should take some time apart," she said, her voice raw. I froze. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. "I'll stay at my sister's for a while. You can keep the apartment." I can't live in this limbo anymore." I nodded, unable to argue, unable to beg her to stay, because deep down I knew she was right. That afternoon, I stood in the doorway and watched her pack. Every shirt, every book, every pair of shoes she tucked into her suitcase felt like another memory slipping through my fingers. I didn't stop her. I just stood there, silent, as if words would only make it worse. Before leaving, Kenzie turned back, her eyes swollen and red. "I tried everything to hold on to you, but love can't survive if one person has already let go." The door closed behind her with a dull thud, echoing through the empty apartment. That sound, it felt final. That night, I called Grace, not just to vent, but because I needed a voice on the other end reminding me I wasn't completely alone. "I'm so tired." "Grace," I confessed, my voice trembling. "It's all falling apart." She sighed softly. "Sometimes letting go is the only way to set each other free." I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my face. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with pain I wasn't ready for. But I knew this much. This was just the beginning of the end. The apartment suddenly felt too big with just me in it. The familiar sounds seemed to vanish. Kenzie humming in the kitchen while cooking, the soft footsteps on the floor, even her giggles while watching a cheesy romance movie. Now, there was only the ticking of the wall clock and the distant hum of traffic from the street below. On the first day, I did a little cleaning, putting away the few things of Kenzie's that were left behind. The blue mug she always used, the wool scarf hanging on the door hook, the half-finished novel on the shelf. I didn't have the courage to throw them away, so I stuffed them into a box and slid it under the bed. Every time I bent down and saw it, my chest felt heavy. That evening, I opened the fridge and realized it held nothing but a few cans of beer and a half-eaten pizza. Kenzie usually stocked it full, and only now did I realize how lazy I had become in her absence. I poured a beer into a glass, turned on the TV, trying to fill the emptiness with noise, but the apartment remained as cold and hollow as an anonymous hotel room. Night came, and I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Every corner of the bed, every lingering scent on the pillow reminded me of Kenzie. I asked myself, was I too cruel not to hold on to her? Or was it my silence that made everything fall apart so quickly? The question repeated itself over and over until I finally drifted into exhausted sleep. On the second day, Grace called. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Are you okay? I heard your voice yesterday and I'm still worried." I let out a small, hollow laugh. Okay is a luxury, Grace. She was silent for a moment, then said, if you want to get out of that stifling apartment, I can take you somewhere. No need to talk, just breathe. I agreed. That afternoon, Grace drove to pick me up. We drove along suburban roads, the wind rushing through the windows, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and pale afternoon sunlight. No one spoke much. Grace occasionally played a soft song. I rested my head against the window, feeling the weight of the past few days lift just a little. We stopped at a small roadside cafe. The space was warm, the scent of pastries faint but inviting. Grace ordered me a cappuccino, as if she knew exactly what I needed. You don't have to say anything if you're not ready, Grace said, noticing me staring at my coffee, unsure where to begin. Just knowing someone's here with youth, that's enough. I looked at her. Under the warm yellow lights, her face was calm, gentle. A strange feeling stirred in my chest, gratitude mixed with guilt. I knew I was leaning on Grace more than I should, and it wasn't fair to either Kenzie or Grace. After that day, Grace and I talked more. During the day, I buried myself in work, filling my schedule so I wouldn't think. But at night, I found myself turning to messages from Grace as an escape. We shared little things, a new cafe she discovered, a song I heard on the way to work, or just complaints about a long day. Sometimes I laughed at a silly message from Grace and then jolted, realizing I hadn't laughed this freely with Kenzie in a long time. The feeling was sweet yet guilty, like a double-edged sword. One weekend evening, Grace invited me to walk in the park by the lake. The yellow lights stretched along the path, the night breeze cool and crisp. We sat on a bench, silently watching the water sparkle under the moonlight. Do you think about going back to Kenzie? Grace asked softly. I sighed. I don't know. Part of me wants to hold on, for the memories, for what we've been through. But another part feels like it's too late. Grace nodded quietly, saying nothing more. We sat in silence, listening to the rustling leaves. And in that silence, I felt more heard than ever before. That night, I couldn't sleep immediately. I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking of the early years with Kenzie. The first date when I struggled to find words, the trips we planned excitedly, even the little fights that ended with a hug. All of it had once been my whole world, and now that world was crumbling. I began to wonder, is love really just a phase? When it passes, are we left only with obligations and habits? On the third day, Kenzie texted me, short and simple. I'm okay. You take care of yourself too. I read it over and over, my heart heavy. I wanted to reply, to say something comforting, but in the end, I let the message pass. I realized we were both learning to live without each other, and that lesson was more painful than anything I had ever experienced. The following week passed in a strange rhythm during the day. I functioned like an automaton working, replying to emails, attending meetings, occasionally staring out the window with a hollow feeling in my chest. At night, I returned to the empty apartment and saw messages from Grace. Those small lines of text felt warm, like a lifeline in the middle of a vast, rough sea. Have you had dinner yet? There's a new noodle place. Want to try it? Do you want me to come with you? Simple questions, yet far from superficial. They made me feel both relief and guilt. I knew I was leaning on Grace more than I should, but the fact that she genuinely cared made me feel loved in a way I hadn't experienced with Kenzie. One evening, I decided to take a walk along the street near my apartment. The cold wind cut across my face, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine from trees lining the sidewalks. I walked silently, thinking about the times Kenzie and I had walked together, hand in hand, arguing over trivial things, but always ending with laughter. The scene played in my mind like a slow-motion movie, both sweet and painfully sharp. My phone buzzed. A message from Grace. Want to go somewhere this weekend? Just a little change of scenery. I stopped, looking at the words, and felt a warmth rise in my chest. Sure, you choose the place. I didn't write anything else, not sure if I should. Share the complex emotions surging inside me that weekend. Grace drove me out to the outskirts of the city. We arrived at a small lake I had never known, with winding trails and trees stretching their green canopy overhead. The breeze was soft, the water shimmering like silver. We didn't speak much, occasionally exchanging a smile or a glance, then falling back into silence. Do you feel lost? Grace asked as we sat by the lakeside, our feet brushing the cold water. I sighed. A lot, but not completely. I feel lost, yes, but it's also like I'm finding something I'd lost. Grace nodded quietly, saying nothing more. We sat together, absorbing the stillness, listening to the gentle lap of the water and distant birdsong. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace, even though the weight of Kenzie's absence still pressed on my heart. That evening, on the drive home, Grace played soft music. I looked at her and saw her calm, gentle, and patient expression. I knew she didn't push or demand anything. Her mere presence made me feel less alone, but the guilt lingered. Every message with Grace, every laugh at one of her silly jokes, reminded me of Kenzie. I missed the nights we watched movies together, the little jealous moments, the sweet words that now existed only as memories. That feeling was both warm and piercing, like holding two things in your hands, but unable to keep either fully. On the second day after the trip, Kenzie called. I didn't pick up immediately, staring at the screen with mixed feelings. Finally, I answered. Her voice was steady, even, but I detected a slight tremor that I recognized immediately. Are you okay? She asked. I let out a small, forced laugh. Okay, in my own way. We spoke briefly. Kenzie shared small, everyday things. Work, friends, trivial matters I had once taken for granted. I listened, feeling my heart soften and ache at the same time. I wanted to run to her, hug her, and tell her I still loved her. But reason whispered, not now. We were both learning to live without each other, and breaking that balance could shatter everything completely. That evening, I texted Grace, thanks for today. Just having you there is enough, she replied quickly. You don't need to say much. I understand. The truth was, I wanted to say more. I wanted to tell Grace about missing Kenzie, about the chaos in my heart, but I feared hurting both of them. I was caught between two relationships, one past love still full of memories, and a new bond with hope and care. Balancing them seemed almost impossible. One afternoon, walking down a familiar street and seeing couples holding hands, I wondered if I ever had a chance to return to Kenzie. And if I did, would I even be worthy of that love? The questions repeated endlessly in my mind. With no answers in sight, Grace was still there for me, like a friend, a safe harbor. But I knew the more I leaned on her, the more I had to face the truth. If I didn't learn to let go of the past, I would never truly move forward. And if I didn't learn to cherish the present, I might lose what I already had. That night, I sat alone on the sofa, staring out the window. The yellow streetlights reflected off the glass, creating hazy, shifting images. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and told myself, I need time. I need to learn to love myself and face my feelings. And for the first time in days, I didn't feel entirely empty. I knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but I also realized something. Pain and loss are part of growing up. As long as I didn't run away, didn't avoid it. Maybe one day my heart would be strong enough to accept happiness wherever it came from, with whomever, I couldn't say yet. In the days that followed, I began to realize that pain wasn't something to avoid, was something to face. Each morning I woke up, the empty apartment still there, but I learned to move through its silence. I cleaned, cooked for myself, walked along familiar streets, telling myself that even small steps were part of the healing process. Grace remained by my side. But our relationship had become clearer. It was no longer blind reliance, but a genuine sharing, a spiritual anchor. We laughed, talked, explored new cafes, listened to songs, shared stories of everyday life. I started to see that alongside loss, there were still moments of peace and warmth I could hold on to. Kenzie, in her own way, was finding herself again. Occasional messages still came, short but meaningful. Have you eaten? Take care of yourself. I didn't rush to reply, but knowing she still cared enough to comfort me was reassuring. We were learning to love without possession, to care without restraint. One evening, I sat alone at my desk, looking out the apartment window. The yellow streetlights reflected on the glass. Distant cars whizzed by ordinary, yet somehow oddly calming. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and realized I didn't feel completely empty anymore. I had begun to accept loss, to look toward the future with hope instead of fear. The next day, Grace invited me for a walk in the park. We strolled silently, comfortable in each other's presence. Occasionally, she held my hand gently, without pressure, just a subtle connection. I realized that happiness didn't have to be grand or rushed. Sometimes it was in quiet moments, having someone who listened, shared, and simply existed alongside you. I thought of Kenzie, remembered the years we spent together, the memories sweet and bitter. But now, instead of suppressing that longing, I learned to cherish it as a part of life, a part that shaped who I had become. I knew that if one day we met again, it wouldn't be the same relationship, but there could still be respect and love in a different way, free, without pain or entanglement. Then one morning, looking at myself in the mirror, I saw someone calmer, more mature, someone who knew how to love themselves and those around them. The old wounds were still there, but they no longer made me collapse. Instead, they were marks of growth, experiences no one could take away. The story of Kenzie, of Grace, of myself like an open book, each chapter leaving its own lesson. I realized that love doesn't always last forever, but human connection, care, and the presence of those we love will always be a source of strength. That evening, as the lights in the apartment dimmed, I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a rare sense of peace. No more fear, no more despair, only calm, acceptance, and a heart learning to open, ready to receive the good that lay ahead. And in that moment, I knew that even though the road ahead was long, full of challenges, I would walk it with courage and hope. Because, in the end, Life is made of moments, relationships, and experiences, and as long as we dare to feel, to love, happiness will always find its way in its own unique way.